Hello, everyone. This is Bentley. This is a kind of impromptu topical live stream, mostly because, a lot like last week where I had to miss a lot of stuff due to work, I was working like crazy this week too. So, I'm going to keep it kind of topical, so it's sort of like a video, but I want to talk about a couple of things, um, and then should be out of my latest grind and be back to normal schedule. So, expect the videos I'm going to talk about to be coming just in the next several weeks. And then I want to tell a little story. And I'm going to start with the story. So, my retirement tank, and I'll bring up a picture. It's in the thumbnail too, but I'll show it. This guy here. This is when I first planted this tank. And, it's brand new. It sat like this for... I think I spent 4 months cycling it and giving it time, and part of that was because I needed an extra filter to go with it. I only had this little, like you can see it in the background there, this little Penguin 350B, right? You know, the one with the bio wheels and all that kind of stuff. That was the only filter I had to start, and it was just enough to move water. So I had some sponge filters. I think you can see one of them. There's another one hidden behind the rocks on the other side, but you can see the one that's over there by the wood where all the plants are. I used those just to move water at first while I was trying to get myself a decent canister filter. This is while I was unemployed. I built this giant tank while I was unemployed. Like, what kind of crazy person does this, right? This tank, when I first started it, didn't have a ton of the plants that are in there now. The only thing that is in there now that was in there when I first planted this is the Anubias that's in here. So there's a little bit of like Nana Golden and a whole lot of Nana Petite. So the rocks are covered in Nana Petite and a little bit of Boost, what's called Mini Super Red. And then there's some golden on the wood. And other than that, like every plant that is in this tank when I first planted it is gone. It has completely changed. So you can see kind of in that picture, right? There's Pogostema and Octopus in the back, and what you don't really see on the edge over here, right? More this way, is there's some Anacharis, and there's also a bunch of Rotala rotundifolia. So what is kind of commonly called indica, but is just basic Rotala rotundifolia. And then in the front, there's a whole bunch of Stargine repens. I love Stargine repens. I've grown it several times in several tanks. And you can kind of see there's a big split, right? So we got a bunch of Dragonstone, a bunch of Malaysian driftwood. There's a ton of sand. There's this big piece of spiderwood, kind of like a tree up in the rocks. And there's some Physidens fontanus on that to try and give it some foliage. That really never ended up looking super good. It looked good for like 3 months, and then it was just like a nightmare. And then you have that sandy area, and that's all just sand. And then the aquasoiled area, right? That was like a full ADA, so it has power sand in it. There's a little bit of Eco Complete because I had a spare bag mixed in, and then a bunch of Amazonia powder type specifically. I wanted the smaller granule over the top. It's nothing like that now, right? So when I first built this, and you can see it's still got a Beamswork set of lights on it, right? I was buying cheap lighting. That my first goal originally was after this thing had fully cycled, and I was going to get myself a canister filter somewhere, just find a used one. I was going to put a ton of small schooling fish in this. I had this tank planted and built before I had ever seen the tour of Gary Lang's fish room. Right? So I was originally going to what I loved as a child. So I wanted to find some some kind of Dainio. I used to keep longfin zebra Dainios as a kid. And I loved them to death. And I wanted something kind of like that, maybe something a little more flashy. And I ended up at first with 20 Kyathit Dainios and then 20 gold ring Dainios. So I had a lot of Dainios in this tank at first. I had some auto sinkless, of course. Like I've loved auto sinkless basically ever since I came back to this hobby. I've had auto sinkless in every tank. they're just a staple. If the tank has plants, it has auto sinkless. And my goal was I was just going to put hundreds of schoolers in here and a couple of different mixed schools and just let them do their thing. That was the first goal of this tank, right? And it changed really fast, right? Because then I found that tour of Gary Lang's fish room that was done by the co-op, and then I found like several more by other channels, and I was game over. Like I saw rainbowfish, and it was game over. And I think I put some white clouds in this thing too, if I remember correctly, before I ended up buying my first rainbows. So this tank, like with the rainbows, the Anacharis died on me. The Rotala rotundifolia and the Pogostemon did great, but I had gone and decided I was going to add CO2, right? Because every video I'd seen doing like ADA Amazonia in it had CO2, so I added CO2 to this thing. And the stems grew like just wildfire, right? I mean, they were growing so fast I could hardly keep up with them. And for a while, that Pogostemon octopus that's in there was one of my best ways to basically earn store credit at the aquarium co-op. At this point, I'd been shopping at the aquarium co-op, but this was way early. This was back when I think I started watching Corey's channel when he was at like about 40,000 subscribers, which, still pretty big in the grand scheme of things, but way early, right? And it hit I had this tank and I hadn't planted it yet. I was buying supplies, getting prepped for it. And that's when I had seen the video of his 50,000 subscribers and saw all this Seattle stuff and realized, like, oh, he's in Seattle. I'm a dope. How did I not know this? I got to go out to the shop. And that's where I got like all the Stargine Repins, all the Anubias, and the Pogostemon in the background. I bought some other plants online and actually had some pretty good experience, but that's also where like the driftwood came from and all that dragonstone that's in there. I all bought it basically at the co-op over a series of trips while I was trying to plan out what fish I was going to put in this thing, because I wanted to do small schoolers. Well, all the Anacharis died. It really, except for like 2 stems, just didn't take off. I had 2 stems that actually converted because it was all immersed grown, right? And those did okay for a while, but with 2 lonely stems, I just kind of hated it. Right? I didn't want to wait that long to propagate it where like everything else was doing great. So I changed that out and I bought some red tiger lotus. And why is red tiger lotus important? It sparked my love of nymphaeas, and to this day, I think maybe crypts and nymphaeas kind of sit doing this. It almost depends on the week as to which one I love the most as my favorite plant to put in an aquarium. And I'm kind of going to interlace some things into this story one of the upcoming projects that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a plant-related video. I've had a lot of stuff for like, give us a species profile. I don't necessarily want to do species profiles, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to give you guys a tips video on how to trim pretty much any of the lotuses or lilies. So like we're going to use a dwarf aquarium lily in brother-in-law James's tank, but that's a good example of any of the nymphaea species that you can trim and train to only grow to a certain height. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so that's one of the videos that's coming up here really, really, really soon. That'll probably be next week or the week after. It just depends on what I get to filming this weekend and over the course of next week. Now that my my schedule's calmed down, and one of my coworkers is in chat, who's been working his brains out too, and I'm really, 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 really thankful to that person. You know who you are. You know who you are. So that was one of the big things, right? I put the nymphaea in, and I added CO2. I went out, and mind you, right, I spent like $600 just on substrate for this tank. And I'm unemployed. I want to be very clear about this. This is while I'm unemployed in 2016. The whole tank and the stand with the filter, not those lights, cost me $150, and I put $600 worth of substrate in this thing. Think about that for a sec. Like, It seems like the opposite, right? You think you put like, I put $100 of substrate in my $600 tank, not $600 of substrate in a used $150 tank. And that's with the stand. With the stand, it cost me that much. Although the stand didn't look like that. Oh man, the stand was this ugly pastel yellow color. It had been painted several times. It had obviously been painted red, and then somebody painted it black, and then painted this like pastel yellow color, and it was thick. I mean, it looked like literally a quarter-inch of paint was on this thing that we had to, me and my roommate at the time, slowly and carefully sanded and scraped off to expose the wood. And there's still spots on that stand if you look around where you can find little bits of the paint. But for the most part, you don't see it with a really dark stain. And then we stained it and let it do all its thing. This tank, like, getting this thing going was a long process. Just to get it to this point, this picture here, right? So I get rid of all that stuff, and I'll take this picture off now. And I've seen rainbows, and I'm talking to the staff. And at the time, the primary staff at the store were Robert, who most of you know from watching Aquarium Co-op. And then if you've watched Aquarium Co-op for a long time, there was a gal named Allie who used to be at the store. She used to have this thing on Facebook where they do Allie feeds, and they'd feed tanks all the time. That was kind of Allie's thing. And Allie is a member of the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society, and I kind of met her through there, and through the going up to the shop, she became a pretty good friend of mine. And I was sitting talking with her, and it's like, yeah, I saw this rainbowfish video. Do you guys bring in rainbowfish that often? And Allie was like, no, not really, but I can talk to Robert, or just next time you're in, when Robert's in, come in on this day. That's when he usually works. He'll order them for you. If they're on the list, just talk to him and let him know what you want. It's like, cool. And mind you, during this time, I had met Corey a few times, because that's back when he would still work at the store every once in a while. And so I'm sitting here and I'm prepping all this stuff, and I decide I'm not going to buy any more fish. I've got a few schoolers in there. I had 3 groups of 20 in this big tank, which I added them pretty slowly. So I just did like one group of 20, then I waited. One group of 20, then I waited. One group of 20, I was taking it slow, letting it build up. And like, this is a well-planted tank that I had let basically self-cycle for months. And I was still worried about putting stuff in too fast. Now, at this point, I'd replaced one of the sponge filters with a used FX6 that I picked up on what I thought was a smoking deal, because I only paid $200 for it. Nowadays, I look at that and I'm like, I can get that used if I use the right coupons at a PetSmart at the right time at XYZ, right? I can get that brand new instead of used. But at the time for me, I was like, that's such a deal. That thing costs $300. I'm saving $100. And this person says it's in great shape, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this kind of stuff. So I've got the big filter on there, and I'm super impressed. And I love that thing, and it's part of that used one that to this day still runs like an absolute champ, right? That's part of the reason why I love those filters so much. Is they take so much abuse, and just keep on going, and they're phenomenal. So, why am I taking a few moments to mention the FX6? I got reached out to, another upcoming project. Fluval is sending some of their new BioFX media to a bunch of creators, and I luckily made the list of people they reached out to. I'm on the Fish Psychos list, who make enough videos and love their stuff enough that they were like, let's send this out to this person. And I have kind of a decent, like, occasional conversational relationship with the guy who's in charge of some of this promotional stuff. As you know, that's how I got my Aqua Sky light, right? And we'll be testing that in an FX6, so we'll be looking forward to that. We'll basically do a fresh FX6 from the ground up, and we'll do some just put it in and just see what it looks like after running for a couple months. Do we see any degradations in the quality of it, or and then early when we first get it, like, how dusty is it compared to some of the other kind of ceramic medias out there? So we'll do some little tests and stuff like that. Probably be 2 videos surrounding that. One, kind of just some initial impressions when I first get it, unbox it, all that kind of stuff. And then later on, after I've been running it for a few months, just kind of looking to see what's going on, right? See how it's doing compared to some of the other media that's out there. I'll probably direct compare that to Brightwater's S-Series stuff, because I have quite a lot of that, and I like that media a lot. It's a really, really nice media. So I'm sitting here, and I get a phone call kind of out of nowhere from Allie. And she goes, "Hey, Bentley, this lady just showed up. She has to move, and she's bringing in a bunch of adult rainbow fish. It's her personal display tank's colony, and they're going to be in quarantine tomorrow morning. Do you want to come out?" And I think this is like a Thursday or something. "And they'll be in quarantine for at least a week. Do you want to come out and look at them, and then maybe see if you can be the person that adopts them?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I'll be there tomorrow," right? And she gave Robert a heads up for me, just so Robert would know that I was going to come in. And this is like the first time the folks at the Aquarium Co-op ever let me into the quarantine room. Now I get to go in every once in a while, as long as it's not too busy. If it's too busy, like, we're not going to do that, right? But I tend to go at like weird hours, so sometimes it's kind of quiet, and I get an opportunity to, like, it'll be something like, especially when Robert was working, be like, "Oh, you got to come check out this cool thing I ordered that's in quarantine right now." Because it's us fish nerds just having fun, right? So I go there the next day, and I'm out there with my roommate, and my roommate, like, had looked at rainbow fish pictures online. It's like, "I don't know, man, they got funny body shapes. I don't know if those are going to look as cool as you think they're going to look." Go into the quarantine room, and looking at it, there's these big, beautiful Bosemani, turquoise rainbows, and like all my initial rainbows, right, that I had adopted. And I didn't even care about, like, I wasn't a snob as I am now, where I'm like, I need to know exactly what the catch location is, and what kind of, like, care these have gone through, like whose hands these have been through to vet that they're good enough. I'm such a snob nowadays, but back then it was just like, these are going to be my first rainbow fish, and I was so excited. And it's these big, beautiful, like, Ayumaru, Bosemani, and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking at them all, and at first I was like, okay, which ones do I want to get? And then eventually I was like, "Hey, Robert, do me a deal on just all of them. I'll just take all of them. Do me a deal." And, this made it easy. He doesn't have to put them out on the floor. He basically doesn't have to even finish them in quarantine, because I'm going to take them home that day, and I'll do the quarantine myself. Or at least that's what the thought is, right? That Bentley's going to handle the quarantine. But they all looked in really good health. I didn't see anything obvious. And, he made me a great deal. I said, okay. Paid for them. Had them all in bags. And I can remember they had to find a box for us out of the supply room to fit all these bags. There's so many bags, and we couldn't just, like, manage them easily. And back at the time, like, I drove a Mustang, right? So I'm in a sports car that doesn't have a lot of room, and it's basically me and my roommate. That's almost all the space until you get to the back seat as storage. And we're trying to balance all these fish bags. We had to have a box to hold everything, and, like, those big rainbows do not like being in bags. They hate it. So they're sloshing around and making all this racket. And it's like an hour drive home. Get home, float all the bags, just letting them temp. And the only things in the big tank at the time are 20 white clouds, 20 gold rainbows, and 20 Caiaphidanias. It's like, there's nothing in here. This thing's been running for a while. That FX6 has been on this tank for a month. We're just going to put these rainbows in and let them go. And I know somebody's out there like, "You didn't even quarantine?" Like, you're right. I made all the mistakes. Luckily, I didn't have any issues. But the only thing I didn't account for is just how boisterous those rainbows are when it comes to eating. So I would go feed the fish, and they're just zipping all over the place, and it's fun to watch. But I'm realizing, like, the white clouds kind of are staying out of the way, and the Danios are kind of just staying out of the way, hiding, because they're worried this is a predator fish, and they're perfect. Their rainbows are like trying to school them, and the Danios are just running away, which is hilarious to watch in the tank. But after a while, you're like, oh, this kind of stresses them out. Thankfully, didn't get any disease. Had to kind of change the way I fed stuff. So I'd feed the rainbows up front, right? And they'd get all crazy and do rainbow things, eating food. And then while they're sitting up front, we'd reach in the back of the tank and feed all the Daniels and the white clouds, so they didn't have to deal with the rainbows going nuts on them for a second. And the rainbows would be distracted just long enough that most of the small fish could eat their food and get out of the dodge before they'd realize, oh, there's even more food over here, scatter out, rainbows, and not have to fight each other as much. They're such silly fish. So those are like the early days of that tank. Eventually, over time, right, I got some more rainbows, and we had a really big community. Some of the little fish, over time, they just passed away naturally from their age. Really didn't have any disease issues, but just over time, and sometimes just they're fighting rainbows, and some lessons learned, right, from me being young and dumb when it came back to coming back to this hobby. We had several plants change out. Like, eventually, I put some swords in there. I added some crypts. I tried all sorts of stuff in that tank. I tried to do glossostigma. I tried to do all sorts of, like, grassy type stuff. I was trying to do carpets in all sorts of ways because seeing carpets everywhere, they look so amazing. And my Stargrind Repens for a while looked amazing, and then after one trim where I trimmed it too deep, it was just like, nope, I'm not coming back anymore. You done goofed. And so I kept trying to replace it with different carpets, and the rainbows would just, like, shred that up. Because every time it was like, oh, this is a new spawning ground, and they just would, within a day of it planting, it'd all get kicked up. Drive me crazy. So, that's kind of the early days of my retirement tank. And over time, like, as some of my big rainbows got old, and I wasn't keeping them in individual tanks, like this was my display tank, and some stuff changed, it just became my retirement tank. That's where, when fish got old, I let them go in the big tank. It's nice and relaxed. It's chill over there. They just get to live out their lives in that big tank. If they're not something where I want, like, a species-only tank or some kind of breeding project, right? Because I did breed fish for a little while. Then eventually I became employed again, and I was very, very busy. And I lost a lot of my free time from there. About the only other note on the early retirement tank is when I was doing plants for profit, right? And I was like literally living the plants for profit life. I was making probably 400 or 500 a month selling plants just out of my house on, like, Craigslist and OfferUp. I would use the display tank as a way. So I'd take people in that room and be like, okay, so, you know, because at first all I did was advertise dwarf water lettuce. And people would come to buy dwarf water lettuce, and they would see all of my planet tanks and go, oh, especially the rainbow tank was really eye-drawing. And I did this on purpose. It's kind of sneaky, right? It's like you advertise one thing and bring them in, they see all the other stuff. Then they start asking, like, oh, are you selling this? Are you selling that? Are you selling this? All that kind of stuff, right? And it was the way that I started early, where it made pictures and ads kind of easy. But you get people to come in, they see all these other plants, get really interested in them, and then want to buy those plants too, and make them deals and do stuff like that. And that's kind of how I got rolling in plants for profit too. It's like the early days of the retirement tank, it was a way to basically advertise plants that I was selling. It's very, very fun. So let's talk a couple of projects, and I'll do some questions out of the chat too. This won't be going super long, guys, just a heads up, just because I do have some stuff I need to take care of today. But we'll go for a little bit, all right? Just because I know I've missed a bunch of stuff recently. Let's see here. So we've got the first two videos I talked about. Just I'll recap what's coming up, right? Number one, I'm going to do a video on how to train Nymphea so that they'll only grow to a certain height. For the most part, there's some outliers and some tips and stuff that'll be there to explain everything. But basically, if you're trying to control the height that it grows to, there is a way to train it. And I'll be doing a video using Dwarf Aquarium Lily in brother-in-law James's tank. Now, granted, that's a smaller tank. It's a lot easier to do with some bigger tanks. But the practice and principles are the same. So we'll go over that stuff, teach you guys some tricks. Super easy video, but at the same time, as far as, like, the lesson is concerned, it's really easy to understand. But we'll demonstrate it to show you guys directly what you're going to try and do. And give you some tips and tricks and stuff about how long it takes and all that kind of stuff. Second, Fluval is sending me their new BioFX media, so we're going to do some videos surrounding that. We'll do kind of an initial impression, unboxing, looking at how it compares to a couple of other medias, as far as, like, how much rinsing you need to do it, how dusty is it, what size is it? So how well does it fit into trays of a filter and stuff like that? We'll do a few things like that. And then long term, I'm going to load up an FX6 with it. I'll probably have another FX6 loaded with Brightwater's Series S, just because I have a good amount of that, and I really like that media. I honestly think it's one of the best medias out there, at least for what I've tested. And we'll just see side by side after a few months, like, what each of them looks like. Or seeing any breakdown in the bio effects. I know that the Series S just doesn't break down. It's pretty amazing, but we'll check some of these things. And then one of the other videos we're doing with that Tetra Whisper versus the new Aquarium Co-op air pump. So I've got a setup for that where we're going to have 2 sponge filters in my 29 gallon that has the Rubro Striata. So they're going to basically be side by side. We'll have both air pumps, and what we're going to do just over time, we're going to see the flow out of with the exact same setup, all same length of cable, all that kind of stuff. Airline cable, jeez. same airline. We're just going to see the flow as it comes through a sponge filter and what we're looking at, right? And then what we're going to do is, after a few months of letting it run and just me kind of making some observations, we'll see how much gunk is in each of the sponge filters side by side. So these 2 sponge filters are going to replace which it's a Eheim, I think the classic 150, right, is the way that they advertise it in the US, but I think that's like the 2213. It's not the 2211, it's not the tiny one. It might be the 2215, but regardless, a really standard Eheim filter. It's just going to replace that filter. So we'll have the initial one there where we just take some impressions, right? We did some air tests before. We're going to do a decibel meter this time, so you'll actually get to see by decibels testing how loud each of those things are in where they're going to be set. And then we'll just give them some time and see like which one actually has better flow into the same kind of coarse filter, which is collecting a little bit more gunk. And it might not be any difference, which would be really nice, right? And then let's see here. So we got those 2. Very, very soon, I need to finally schedule it, but I'm going to go out to Northwest Aqua Hobby, and we're going to talk about growing plants immersed. And we're also going to talk about his story. So that's Will. He's a fantastic guy. If you haven't seen Northwest Aqua Hobby's channel, he's got a great channel. And he puts out a lot of content, which is fantastic. He's way better than me. he's got much better scheduling than I do. But this is a guy who quit his job to basically create his own at-home plant farm, doing immersed stuff. He runs his own website, and it kind of like how we've done in the past with a few other people. I want to go through and talk his story, like understand what made him do this. Especially in the middle of a pandemic and all that kind of stuff. Like, we're going to learn his story. We're going to learn some tips on how to grow plants immersed and be super successful with them, because he's been doing a phenomenal job. And just an interview with Will, because he's a fantastic dude, and he's become a good, I would have to say acquaintance, because we've only seen each other in person like twice, but I would say friend. Let's be fair. I call him friend. I call a lot of people friend, because that's how I roll. I'm a friendly person. So we'll do that. And then also, one of the other things we got coming up is Dan from Aquarium Insider. Also, if you follow on Instagram, it's Consolidated Fish Farms. This is a guy who's literally grew up a fish farmer in the United States, runs a fish farm to this day, and just kind of telling a little bit of his story and understanding what a modern fish farm is like compared to the days of when he was a kid. And where some of those challenges are. How does a fish farmer survive nowadays, right? You've got these, if you've seen some of those impressive facilities, say Corey's tour, out in Israel, or something like the Hong Kong fish market and stuff like that. How does someone in the States, and in the grand scheme of things, not with this mega $1 million facility, stay successful and compete in modern day aquariums, right? How do you set up your network and those kind of things? We'll ask a lot of questions and just tell his story a little bit too, and kind of get a glimpse into life of what it's like farming fish for a living, as opposed to say owning an aquarium store. So hopefully you guys will really enjoy a lot of that stuff. I'm trying to get a few of those scheduled. Some of the stuff that, of course, is just here at my house. I've got that that's just me filming stuff. I've got time. We'll be doing it. But some of the other stuff is scheduling some of those interviews or like going out to see Will at his place. And while I'm out there, I'll probably go to Redfish Bluefish again just because it's not very far away. So maybe we'll even schedule a little like meetup for folks that are in the Northwest and just have a fun day or something. I don't know. But I'll put something on the community tab if that's going to happen. Okay, now, that's the video part there. I could cut it right there and call it a day, but let's do some questions in chat, because chat, you have been here. There's actually 50 of you on a Saturday morning. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good to see you all. I'm back from the purgatory. Oh, man. All right. We got some general comments. A lot of people saying hello for missing me. Thanks. Joe, first time catching me live. Good to have you, Joe. Let's see here. Viking Warrior Corey is king. I mean, there's one person who says he's the king. I don't know. I hate crowning anyone a king. I think everybody has a very relevant and interesting set of information they can bring to this hobby, especially if they're truly passionate about it. And if you were to ask me, I would say Dean is the king, but that's because like Dean has so much. Dean's probably forgotten more information than I know. Like Dean just knows so many things that anytime I get to sit and talk with Dean, I learn something. I'm always learning from Dean, even if we're just casually babbling at each other and catching up. There's some nugget of like wisdom in there that comes out that you'd never think of to look up or anything like that. And it's not like he was like, I'm gonna purposely teach this man a lesson. Like, no, it just comes out and you're just like, wait, hold on. Say that again? Huh. It's just, it always happens. I love that guy to death. He's the best. 10 strip music, does that flex need a top up? Yeah, it's like right at the black line. Actually, the big problem I have right now is I have the spouts a lot higher than I normally do, because I was trying to do some minor maintenance to them. And I forgot to ever put them back down. And yeah, I've been working my brains out the last 2 weeks, but it probably could use a small top up. Maybe like an inch. It's actually probably going to get torn down here soon. Oh, one more video. Sorry, there is one more video too. I got that that tank from Higer, that all-in-one tank. It's like 8 gallons or whatever. And we're going to do a video with kind of an unboxing and impressions and getting that thing set up. And then you might be surprised at what we do for a setup on that one, because we did a setup for brother-in-law James. This tank is going to be my lady's tank. So we're going to let her make the decisions on the things that go in it, some of the plants, and most likely, because I know she really wants them, it'll probably be a coolie loach tank. So be prepared for that. Maybe put some shrimp in there too, because I know that my friend who's in chat, Alyssa Bentley, has a billion extra shrimps right now, and I'm always willing to try again, no matter how many times I fail. So, oh man. All right, now we'll hit chat. Whee! Mr. Littles, definitely want that video on the Nymphea. Don't worry, it's coming. I got some other plant tip videos I'm trying to plan, just as I want to sprinkle them in as we sprinkle in usual stuff, right? We do a lot of stuff here, a little plant stuff, a little bit of product stuff, a little bit of random stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to sprinkle some stuff in, finding stuff that I think is really useful. Like, to me, I'm not big on plant profiles, because I think there's a lot of people who've done plant profiles. But I think if I can give a more direct, like, here's a tip on something really helpful, or like how I did before my Master Aquatic Horticulturist Pro Tips, where like I give you a certain number of tips on a certain number of plants or whatever it was, right? Just like, hey, if you're doing Java Fern, you want to do X, right? Little stuff like that. That's some stuff that I'm going to go back to sprinkling in as I have time. And think of things that I think are really good information to help you wonderful folks out. Let's see here. Jacob Hill, does anyone know if you can use root tabs with an underground filter? So, kind of. Basically, the question is, how much flow are you putting through the underground filter? If you're doing an air power underground filter where you're not like really pushing a lot of water flow, yeah, that's fine. And in general, what I would do is more have some of those root tabs off to the side, So if you've got, like, let's say that you're at a 40 breeder and you've only got one plate, you're not the entire bottom of the tank, then what I would do is on the side of that plate, bury my root tabs and try to have a good buffer of soil between the plate for the underground filter and where the root tabs are being planted. Now, if you're putting the root tabs, like, directly on top of the underground filter, it's going to suck up a bunch of that stuff and not help you very much. So just be aware of that. Now, if you've got it, like, hooked up to a canister filter and you're doing, like, a super powered underground filter, you're probably not going to have much success with root tabs because there's just too much flow rate and it's just going to pull so much of that stuff down, right? Just in particulates and all that. Unless you have a really hard, very slow dissolving root tab. So you might have a better chance with something like the Seachem Flourish root tabs, where they're a pretty hard thing. But as far as, like, any of the capsule ones, like Aquarium Co-op or Nylac G, yeah, I would not do those at all with underground filters just because of the way they're designed. I think you're running the risk of basically getting no benefit out of them as opposed to, say, just using liquid fertilizer. Danikin Aquatics, what's up? Definitely interested in taming Nymphea. I was just given, I assume, we're missing a word, but I can insert Nymphea minutia, which is beautiful pink and green leaves. Yeah, I imagine you got that from Alex when you were visiting Alex. I know that he cultivates that Nymphea. I had it at one point, and then I pissed it off when I did some changes in a tank. And yeah, I killed mine that I used to have. But I have, I have a couple species of Nymphaeas, and I've got some more that I have friends that have locally that I'll be picking up, because I'm going to do, in the future, I have a really cool scape in my mind that uses a lot of Nymphaeas, and that'll be fun. But yeah, the cool thing about Nymphaea is you get all sorts of colors if you start branching out some of the species and stuff. It gets pretty wild what you can do with just one species of plants if you take a little time and do a little work mixing the species around. Let's see here. Carrie Pitt suggesting to Jacob, if you follow Fishman, he builds underground filters quite a lot. Yeah, and he does a lot of cool stuff with, like, custom acrylic and all that stuff, and does DIYs. He's awesome. He's got a really cool channel. Stephen P. Aquatics. I'm not a king, I'm a princess. You do you, buddy. You do you. Tree 77, I have two 18-inch Amazon swords and a 75-gallon setup. Regular sword, new and doing great. Narrow leaf from a 40 breeder, turning transparent. Root tabs and Brightwell Fert's Aqua Sky set at summer settings. So, in general, right, the broader the leaf, the less light it needs. If you have a really narrow leaf, it wants a stronger light. So one of the things that you might be running into is not quite enough light, but if that's been in there for a while, it shouldn't be... I guess it depends on how you're being transparent. If it's still green and it's transparent so you can see through it, that's okay. That's when it's converting itself over to immersed growth. But if you're talking transparent as in, like, starting to turn white or something like that, then it's dying. You're probably not getting enough nitrate. So one thing that I would do is, depending on your root tabs and stuff, you might need to see... One thing that gets kind of crazy with swords, okay, and this is a weird thing that swords can do, is if one sword is doing really, really good, it will build this huge, robust root structure, and it can literally reach out across the tank to where the other sword is and kind of choke that other sword out a little bit and minimize its ability to grow. So one of the ways that you can deal with this is you get a basically thin plastic divider. You'll see things like what they call aquarium substrate supports in some of the videos from the UK that do a lot of stuff, and basically force this divider down into your substrate and prevent the roots from being to go across where the other one is. And this is a little tough because usually you need to pre-plan for this, because otherwise you kind of have to, like, chop up a bunch of roots when you're doing this. But yeah, swords can get really aggressive with each other and basically go to war in their root systems, and that makes it tough. Now, Paul Sotero, Bentley, can you appoint someone grand and exalted, Poobah? Oh, good lord. Asking for a friend. No, but I will declare someone the bow father. So if rainbow fish keepers were a mafia, I would say Gary Lang is the bow father. Realistically, that's probably actually Jerry Allen, but I mean he's getting way up there, so we'll let Gary take over, right? He's the one that everybody knows on YouTube the best. Alrighty. Gustav Maverick, Tiny Noodles. Yeah, my lady has fallen in love with the loaches, especially them thick boy noodles that we picked up. They're just a hoot. And at some point, you're probably going to see some small video or something of just like loaches farting left and right, because we laugh every time it happens in that tank. And if you've had big dojo loaches, they do it all the time. So if you see some childish, dumb video come up from me that's just loaches farting, now you know why. Preston John, my personal puffer god. What's up, buddy? You have a question for me. Bensterdate? What is that? What nickname is that, sir? You're going to kill me. I'm going to get some weird nicknames now. I need help throwing out old aquarium equipment. I'll bag it up, but I can't bring myself to drive it to Goodwill or drop it into the trash. Advice. Well, I mean, assuming that you're not, it's still in good shape, I would not be opposed to use something like OfferUp or Craigslist, or Facebook has a for free, or just find like a local aquarium related like sell list and just offer it to people if you're going to do it for free, or even like, hey, give me $5, you take all of this stuff or whatever, to like make someone who's slightly serious about it, and just let them either meet you somewhere, or have them, if you're okay with them, coming to your house, which I did this a ton when I was young. Well, when I was early in my return to aquatics. I've never been young when I came back. Look at this gray hair. There's no way I'm young. But just have folks come over, just pick it up. You'll help out some aquarists, right? They'll get a screaming deal, or they'll even get stuff for free. That's I've done that with used equipment several times, or picked up used equipment that way, where like inside my aquarium club or on Craigslist, just like, it's free, whoever picks it up first. I just messaged them like, hey, is it still there? Because I don't want to drive like 30 minutes and find out it wasn't even there in the first place, But yeah, Facebook Marketplace is probably your best bet, because there's a reasonable number of people there. But I've also had good success on Craigslist and OfferUp too, selling or getting rid of stuff. E-Littles, I know that your dad was a koi guy when you were young. Do you have any interest in ponds or summer tubbing? Yes. Short answer. I actually at some point want to do a video with my dad, if he's willing, which I'm sure he is, because he's a good guy, and talk about the koi and what got him into koi, because it's actually a story I don't know. I just know that my dad likes koi, and I never understood exactly why, right? So from that perspective, I'd kind of like to tell that story and talk with my dad about aquatics when I was young, and some of the stuff that he did to get me into fish. But if I could do so, I would very much be doing like a big aquascape pond in my backyard, and doing koi in it. But in the Northwest, there's a lot of predators that will go after koi, so I have to, we get herons out here, we get all sorts of stuff, raccoons when the fish are small, you get types of river otters out here, so you have to take a lot of things into account. And plus, I also still need to have space for the dogs to run in my backyard whenever I can fix my fence. That's been one of my other problems, but yeah. No, I totally want to have koi. I'm not big on summer tubbing so much. Just a lot of it's just my schedule's been such a nightmare already, that trying to make sure I'm doing the right thing in summer tubs on top of all the tanks in my house, I just don't. I don't have the time, and I haven't invested in too many tubs. Like, I have one of the 150 gallon outdoor Rubbermaid tubs, but other than that, I don't have a lot of outdoor tubs. I would like to, get to a point where I'm not working quite as crazily, and be able to do that kind of stuff. Because I would love to put rainbows in a tub out in the summer and let them do their thing. And, because they thrive very well. You usually get a lot of babies if you do it that way. It's one of the few ways to raise rainbows without having to, specifically separate the eggs and do a ton of work. So, tons of stuff like that. Okay. Mike, stand by. Sold 4 bags of rainbows at the local auction, 5 fry per bag, ended up averaging just over 45 a bag. I was pretty happy with that on a small auction. I think that's really good on a small auction. I have seen Ryan at Hoon Aquatics sell stuff at our local club stuff, and I basically have to like pump them up to get people to understand like how much of a smoker of a deal that they're getting to get them up to like 35 and 40 a bag, and he's usually got 6 fry in a bag, and there'll be things like the Clausioensis or some other like relatively rare rainbow that is beautiful, and it's like killing me, but it's because there's so many rainbows and there's only a couple like super rainbow psychos, me and Ryan being the 2 big ones, so you kind of got to help inform people of what they're going to expect, and then it drills it up a little bit more. But I would say if you're doing 5 to 6 fish a bag, getting 45 a bag is pretty dang good. Pretty dang good. I would say you'd have to be like somebody like Gary Lang to get more, right? Mr. Courtney, thank you for the super sticker, buddy. Mr. Courtney works with me, and he is probably one of the most passionate about our project people I've ever met in my life. So if I work a bunch, he works even more. And this guy gets in at incredible hours, works way more than he should, despite the fact that he is currently injured, and I have been literally yelling at him the last few days to stop working so much and go home and rest. So I know that he has a relatively good promotion coming his way, and it is well deserved. So thanks, buddy. Thanks for all the hard work you do, and I'll see you Monday. Stop stalking me on the weekend. Get away from work. Oh Lord. This is how you know that like you get along with the people you work with when they come and watch your fish stream on the weekends. Joe Haney, which one has the prettiest female? Goldie Eye, Blaheri, or Trifasciata Goiter River? Females will decide which one I get. So it depends on the species of Goldie Eye. In each of these cases, you're going to have either color that takes a lot longer to settle in, or it's more washed out color. So in the Goiter River, you're not really going to have too much color in them, but you're going to have a nice solid black bar with a tiny amount of like red pinstriping. The real good red comes in only on the males. You will have a little bit of red in the fins for the females. The Goldie Eye, it really depends on which of the Goldie Eyes. Like Goldie Eye Decay, for example, you'll have that kind of pale, powdery blue body, but you won't have any really the finnage color that you get in the males. And it's very faint. Blaheri take a while for the females to color up, but they will get that orange color in the tail. They don't get that kind of green tint to the front body very much, but they will get a little bit of that orange in the tail, including on like the caudal area of the actual body, not the finnage itself, but the body and fins. So you will see a little bit color there. What I would argue is if you really want the most color in a female, you're going to be looking at things like your turquoises, and or if you want something that's a little more interesting, either Sirawu or Wapoga, it doesn't matter which catch location, but the Chalatharina eleni actually has a great amount of color in the female as well as the male. The male is way more vibrant, but the females have some good color to them too. They show some of that blue and that black bar and just a touch of that yellow. The male's going to like, shine super bright at you. You're never going to miss them, but the females have a little bit of color too, and that makes them really easy to spot compared to a lot of the other Chalatharina fish. So just some food for thought. I would say long-term, Chalatharina females in general actually tend to get some color as far as all of the general girls in that genus. So you might look more toward Chalatharinas if you want to make sure the females have some color too. Or Glossolepis. Glossolepis also tend to have colors in their females, but they tend to be very different. So an example would be the Wanamensis, right? Glossolepis wanamensis, the emerald rainbow. The males are that beautiful dark green color. The females are kind of a silvery with green tint. And it's very pretty. It's a very pretty color. It's not like your generic silver on a basic fish. When you get to the red ones, so you're looking at the incisus or the pseudo-incisus, The male's that beautiful red color. Either it's like a really bright red, or it can be sometimes be almost a burgundy color. The females will be this like brassy gold color, and they look great too because they almost have a kind of goldfishy look to them, although it's less orange and more like gold or brass in coloration. The Multisquamata, again, is another one of those glossolepis where the females do get a completely different color from the male, so you basically get two completely different colors of fish, and that can be very interesting to see because you'll have this bright, vibrant color, and then you tend to have this more metallic color in the girls. So it's very interesting in some of those fish. The Melanotanias are the ones where the fish are the least likely to see a lot of color in the female, and they will have very muted color as they get older. So just be prepared for that. That's kind of how that's a good general rule for rainbow fish as far as trying to figure out where am I going to get color in my females. There's lots of differences in there, right? Because if, like Jeff Koski here, he's got 6 female bosemani and 2 males in his 75 gallon. When you get those females mature, they have a nice yellow and sometimes even orangish color to them that's a little metallic and a little more muted, but they have great color, especially as they get to adults. And if you get really good ones, like a good Atinjo from a good breeder or something like that, the females have great color, and they will look like cheaper, some of the not so great farm raised males as far as their color is concerned, where those males look more yellow, the females look like that, and then the males have that brilliant like reddy orange coloration to them. So you got stuff like that. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. Fish Tank Dad just got 12 Luminatus rainbow fish from Aquatic Arts. They are awesome fish and my first dwarf rainbows. They're good fish, dude. A lot of the pseudomcgills, I don't keep pseudomcgills very often, right? I like a lot of them and I appreciate a lot of them. And the only reason why I don't keep them is because I've just dedicated myself to all the big boys. And it can be tough to make sure that the little guys get plenty of food in a tank with the big boys, just because of how the size differences and how they're all super fast, boisterous fish. It's just, I play it safe because I want pseudomcgills to like be happy and be in their own tank. That's if I was ever to keep them. And eventually I will keep some. I just don't know what. It'll probably be Cyanodorsalis because I like how weird they are, but we'll see. Goose Maverick, I got a 125 and a 75 for free off Craigslist. The 125 is getting resealed to become a new rope fish home. Awesome. Oddball Aquatics would love to hear that because she's the rope fish queen. Got a stand for it cheap from a friend. Might be 100 in the whole thing when I'm done. Wow, that is a steal. That is a steal. M&C Aquatics, I'd like to thank you for all your advice and plant videos. Thanks for your advice, my plants are thriving. That's the best, dude. That's the best thanks I can hear right there. Is all my plants are thriving. I love when I see that kind of feedback. Tree 77, no, thank you, sir. Super chat's totally not required, but I appreciate the $5. Happy to help you out whenever I can. Sometimes it takes longer. I got emails I got to catch up on too, so I'm way behind on those again. But yeah. Let's see here. Jacob Hill, have you ever thought of doing one of those koi ponds that are just a huge square in the ground meant for the koi to grow really big? If you're talking very similar to like what Corey had at his old house, no, because I think if I'm going to take the time to build a pond, I want it to be something pretty. I want it to be something that it's more than just a fish tank in the ground. I want it to be aesthetically pleasing to my home, if that makes sense. If I'm going to take the time to dig a koi pond in the ground, I want it to be something beautiful. And something where I'm going to purposely plant, probably do a very Japanese theme whenever I do one, things like Japanese maples and plants like that, right? Just because those are plants that I love. And, you see those kind of picturesque gardens that are done like that, and it would be very cool to have something like that in my backyard to where I could go on a nice spring evening where it's cool and crisp out, but it's not cold, and just enjoy a sunset, my koi pond and my plants, take some pictures, spend a little time, let the dogs run around, that kind of stuff. That's kind of like the dream, right? That's the dream in my head if I'm ever going to do a pond. I don't want to do something purely functional when it comes to in my yard. Because at that point, I might as well just have big totes, right? And just get some of the big, like, fish holding tanks that you can get if you're at, like, a fish seller or something like that. Because I actually know a guy that has ponds like that bought plants from me in the past. And he was like, oh, if you ever need this done at any time, I can get you the same fish holding tanks that I use on the cheap. And I was like, maybe, but I'd have to, like, level all my ground and all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot of work to then not go through and just make it beautiful at the same time, right? Make it a garden feature as opposed to just a fish pond. Oh, what up, fish people? That has to be Kenny E. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. Bentley, I've been experimenting with many different mosses in my tanks. Hopefully you're doing well. Mosses can be really amazing once you figure them out, but sometimes it can be really tough to get going and doing a thing. Goose Not Matter, I love Haley. I'm up to 5, but not like her 15. Yeah, that's the ropefish queen right there, man. Haley's doing her thing. She's such a hoot in person, too. I don't know if you've met Haley in person at all, but I got to meet her at Fishtoberfest. Shout out to Fishtoberfest. And she's just an absolute hoot to be around. All right. S. Bentley, favorite dwarf Melanotaenia other than Praecox. So can I cheat and say Rubra vittata, which is the red laser, which is basically just a Praecox with pinstripes on it? No. Actually, I really like it, and I would say they're technically a dwarf because they really just don't get that big. I love the Running River rainbow. I think that is a rainbow that, whenever I have the ability to breed again, it's just going to be one of my biggest focuses. Because I think when you see an adult male Running River in a group, it's stunning. Because you get reds, you get golds, you get these brilliant black stripes, you get all this coloration in this teeny tiny fish. And they're vibrant, they're fast, they school very tightly, at least mine do. So you get, like, all the most amazing things out of this rainbow that is also a cool story, right? For basically 15 grand and a bunch of scientists that were very passionate, they prevented this fish from going extinct. And now, slowly but surely, there is an opportunity for many of us hobbyists to keep this beautiful fish. So it's one of those things where, like, it has a story and it's pretty. It's hard for me to, like, think of anything else. Now, granted, I also like McCulloch's. There's the earwurs that, like, man, I've lost so much of my colony. I feel terrible about it, but they're a great fish. There's a lot of smaller Melanotanias that you can get out there that aren't going to get huge. They're only going to be like 3.5 inches when they're done, that are amazing. And it just comes down to, like, what floats your boat. For me, I love the tight schooling behavior that I see in my Running Rivers, and I love their color. Just red, gold, and big black stripes, all this kind of stuff. They're just a phenomenal fish. And it's the reason why I always call them my crown jewel. Even though Bozemanite are my favorite rainbow, they're my crown jewel. Because they have not only a beautiful behavior, beautiful color, but they have an incredible story. And that combination is just something that I can't... You guys know, I love to tell stories, so I can't get away from that stuff. Ginger Graves, one of my rainbows, damaged his gill plate on the side. I've just been watching him and watching water parameters. Anything else to do? I would, if you can, either dose a small amount of salt and use, like, a reef salt, something like that. It's got good mineral content to it. Or a tiny amount of antibiotic just to make sure that we're not dealing with any kind of infection settling in there. You can use something like erythromycin, or I can't remember what Fritz calls their erythromycin, but it's the same medicine, just to deal with that early on. But yeah, salt usually does the trick. It's pretty good at speeding up the healing process, especially in rainbows. And we're talking a really light amount. You're talking like a tablespoon per 20 gallons. You need very, very little. But I call that my, like, therapeutic dose and not a medicinal dose. But yeah, rainbows are dumb. They hurt themselves all the time. But man, are they pretty. Okay, we're going to wrap up here soon because, like I said, I've got a lot of stuff to do. We're going to do a quick hour. Yeah, I think it's Barrison. Thank you, S. I believe you're correct. But one, let's make sure here. I want to make sure I didn't miss a question. Oh, yes. Mr. Literals, are you planning on documenting the Triple Crown for the channel, or is that a trip for pleasure only? It'll be a combination of things. So I am taking my camera, and I'm going to do some content while I'm out there. There's going to be quite a few people out there. I'm not sure how many like direct YouTubers, but we'll see. I'll do some content from the Triple Crown, but also like I'm there for a couple days to see a friend. I'm spending some time with fish nerds. I'm there to socialize. If you are going to the Triple Crown, make sure you find me. Try to find me early. It's my big suggestion. Depending on, I think the next 2 weeks, how things go in my life, I've laid down some certain investments. No, but I'm trying to price out a couple things right now. I'm going to do some exclusive merch that will only be present at the Triple Crown, and it will be free. It'll be the first time I've ever done merch. It will be free. It'll be a giveaway. If the pricing works right, you will have a limited edition hat that will be custom embroidered specifically for the Triple Crown. It'll be the only time I ever make them. They'll never be made ever again. They will be individually numbered if I can make this happen. So that means you will know that you have hat number 2 of however many I can make. It depends on how much they cost me per hat. But I'm working with a couple of different sources right now. I'm actually really trying to do like a small like Etsy level creator, because I'd rather help a person like that out than a larger company. But I might have to go with a larger company just to keep it cost efficient, so that I'm not spending something like $50 a hat or something unreal like that. Because then it's like I can make 10, or whatever. And then at minimum, I'll probably be making up a bunch of stickers as well. So I'll have a bunch of stickers to give away. Those will also basically only be given away at that event, and I'll never do them ever again. There'll be something special about them that makes them unique to that event. So if you happen to be there, find me, and you will get something free and special that no one else will ever have unless they were there and found me too. So just a heads up. I'm going to give away some fun stuff. Why? Because I'm a psycho and I like to give away my money. Okay. One last question, and then we're gonna get rolling here because I have stuff to do. Oh no, Ron Foss, fish housekeeper. Bentley, if you're ever in Minnesota, the sun does not set over. does set over our remodeled 25,000-gallon, 7-foot deep swimming pool. The grow works, and you are welcome to partake. I appreciate that. I want to go to Minnesota at one point, because I want to go to like Twin City Guppies and be able to meet Kang. And also, while I'm out there, although it's technically Wisconsin, but in that general area, go tour Marcel's place. Who Marcel is like just a fantastic breeder, and have a talk with him because he does some amazing stuff and both sells fish as Roseline 17 on Aquabid, but also does some stuff with Dan's Fish too. So you can get stuff from, he's arguably probably like the best, if not one of the top 3 in the U.S. when it comes to rainbow fish, but he does more than rainbow fish. All right, I want one more question. Paul Sotero, some general things about herons and egrets, about ponds. Oh, don't worry, if I ever do a pond, it's going to be deep, like 6-7 feet. 3 feet, sir. That's the kiddie pool. Come on, man. But yeah, you have to give it teep to keep the herons out of it. And there's some other stuff you can do too. Oh, Kang knows you. Uh-oh, watch out. There was one question I saw and I skipped past. I'm trying to find it again to do it right. Oh, there we go. Gary McGowan. From reading up on my mosses, they originate from highly calcareous areas. How can I add extra calcium? And then Goosenot Maverick answered right away, but in general, a lot of the mosses do tend to come from, not all of them, but several of them come from areas where there is quite a bit more mineral content to them. One of the easiest ways to do that, crushed coral. You can do aragonite sand. There's buffers that are out there too. I'm not as huge on some of those, but you can also add things like calcium carbonate, and that will add both a little bit of GH and a little bit of KH, so your carbonate hardness as well. But in general, crushed coral is probably your easiest, best friend. You can also, if you have an Asian market nearby that does that will sell you crushed oyster shell. That is something that you can get that tends to be a little cheaper, but you have to have usually an Asian market nearby that sells oyster in some way, shape, or form. And then you really need to rinse it very thoroughly, and typically you also want to like parboil it lightly. So that means you get your water just to a bare boil, and you dip it in there for like 60 seconds, because you just want to disinfect everything really, really thoroughly, and then give it a very, very thorough rinse. That's just to play it safe. You don't really have to do that so much with a crushed coral. You just have to rinse it. So, just some food for thought. So, with that being said, guys, thanks so much for showing up. We'll be back to normal videos and normal Tuesday live streams this upcoming week. So, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much for watching. If you're going to the Triple Crown, hunt me down. If you're going to the barbecue Thursday night at Rusty Wessel's place, me and Gary Lang are going to be hanging out, talking rainbow nerdery, and enjoying that tour. And also, one other thing. I know I'm supposed to be leaving, but I might be arranging something. I found out my friend who lives out there, he's good friends with the owner of a place called Rec Bar, which is a pinball barcade. So it's a bar with a bunch of pinball machines at it that's fantastic. It's very close to where the convention is being held. It's like a 5-minute away drive. I might be doing kind of an evening thing there or something like that on like Wednesday or something. So be looking out for that if you're going out there. I might try to schedule an impromptu, informal meetup and just have some fun. So yeah, I'll be streaming next Tuesday. We'll be back to normal schedule. We'll be back live and normal on our normal schedule. None of this shenaniganery. All the craziness at work has been brought down to a normal level again as of this Friday. But yeah, Louisville is going to be a blast. I hope to see many of you there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.